Today we are answering the question, what are spirit guides? Are they ancient spirits? Are they interdimensional beings? Or are they something else entirely? And we're also discussing how to unlock your inner power, because these two concepts are intertwined. It's going to be really good. This is information that you need to hear, and it's about increasing your quality of life. It's going to be great information. Here we go. We're going to get right into it. But first, as always, please like and subscribe. It helps out a lot. Spread this information around. And if you want to see this channel grow, if you want to support this channel and help me make bigger and better videos, then consider supporting on Patreon. It is the best way to support my work. You can support on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial or tier 2 or higher here on YouTube by hitting the join button to get access to all of our members only videos, with a new members only video every single week. And we're actually having one today, right after this video, called Are Atoms Conscious? As we explore the idea of, could atoms be alive? Could they be conscious? That's what we're taking a look at the members only video today. Also, be on the lookout in the comments. There are scammers. There are people pretending to be me, saying to join my WhatsApp, join my Telegram. I don't have a WhatsApp. I don't have a Telegram. So if you get a DM or a comment from someone that's pretending to be me, it's not me. It's a fake account. So don't fall for that stuff. Also, there are people in groups out there that don't like what I'm doing and that don't like what we're doing and are spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation about what we do and what I do. So just use logic and reason and use your head and don't fall for that crap. All right, here we go, my friends. We are talking about spirit guides. What are they? And in order to talk about this, I want to bring up this fantastic article that I found on medium.com. Okay. So on medium.com, this article is written by Daniel Hanna, and we're going to be taking a look at it. And if you enjoy it, I want you to go give Daniel Hanna a follow and support them. Maybe leave a comment or something like that. So that's what we're talking about today. So what are spirit guides? This is really important. I see spirit guides being talked about all the time, especially in the New Age community, things about receiving downloads, talking to different beings, etc. So what's going on here? Is this real? Is it not real? Maybe some of you have had this experience, or maybe some of you want to know how to connect to spirit guides, etc. Let's dive right into this. So Daniel says, in my early 20s, I experienced a profound Kundalini awakening that reshaped my perspective on spirituality. What once seemed vague and woo-woo suddenly became palpable and immediate. This transformative experience led me to cultivate a deeper connection with my spirit guides, and I've been fascinated by the subject ever since. So essentially what happened was that Daniel had this profound experience. Previously, he thought, oh, that stuff that sounds all mystical or weird or strange or out there. Well, he had a direct experience of these, mystical types of consciousness states. And this led him to realize, oh, wow, this stuff is real. And I relate to this because I had a very similar experience. So Daniel says that I don't know everything about Daniel, of course. I'm just reading his article right here. But I'm pretty sure that this experience that he was talking about that he had was facilitated by psychedelics, because he talks about using plant medicine. So I think it was facilitated by psychedelics. It wasn't like he was just sitting there one day and then, boo, flash, he had this experience. That does happen to some people. But I think in Daniel's case, it was facilitated by psychedelics. And I had a very similar experience in which, I grew up in a really strict Christian household, indoctrinated into Christianity, brainwashed into Christianity, essentially. But I left the Christian church as I started to study philosophy and science and logic, and began to realize that it was a bunch of BS. So I left the church, and I was very much drawn to a materialist, atheistic worldview. I never considered myself fully atheist or fully materialist. I considered myself agnostic, but I was very much leaning towards that. I was like, okay, well, you got to be able to show me some kind of physical evidence or whatever. At the time, I didn't realize that that's not a correct way of understanding metaphysics, but that's the way most atheists understand it. And that's how I understood it at the time, though I didn't consider myself directly an atheist. But anyway, once I began kind of experimenting with psychedelics, not even very strong psychedelics, honestly just marijuana, smoking marijuana, smoking marijuana really opened my eyes to the fact that there are things in existence that the materialist paradigm cannot explain. The materialist paradigm being that reality is matter and only matter, and the mind is just something that the brain generates as an epiphenomenon or as an extra that's pretty much irrelevant and doesn't have that much of a use. It's kind of an illusion that it generates like steam from a boiling pot or something like that, or from a steam engine. So throughout, using marijuana and experiencing the limitlessness of the mind, essentially that's the idea, is that the mind is limitless and ordered, whereas a material universe is very limited and random. And a limited random universe cannot account for a limitless mind of pattern. When I say order, I mean pattern. You can think of kaleidoscopic imagery or Mandelbrot sets, these mathematical patterns that are generated. So the mind is limitless, the mind is filled with pattern, and a materialist world that is simply based on limited matter and random acts can't support this. There are many other reasons why as well, but these were some of my big reasons to begin to step away from a materialist understanding of reality and understanding that there's much more to reality, specifically there being a mental layer of reality, an immaterial layer of reality, a metaphysical layer of reality underpinning everything. So anyway, I think that's interesting. So I understand where Daniel is coming from with that. So Daniel says here, I'm going to shed some light on spirit guides, and it's probably not what you're imagining. By the end of this article, you're going to have a comprehensive understanding of what spirit guides are, how they serve you, and what you can do to connect with them. So we're going to see what Daniel has to say about this. I'm going to give my opinions and what I think. I agree with some things that Daniel has to say. I don't agree with everything that Daniel has to say. I read some of this article, but not all of it. I skimmed through it real quick. So we're going to be talking a bit about spirit guides here. And so Daniel says, my face-to-face encounter with a spirit guide, and you can see an artistic representation here. So Daniel says, while living in the United States, oh, by the way, I just always want to say, when we talk about psychedelics here, remember, don't do anything dangerous or illegal, and never feel pressured to do these things. You don't have to do these things to reach a higher state of consciousness, okay? So I just want to put that out there, make sure that you understand that. So Daniel says, while living in the United States, I went through a painful breakup. And at the time, I was practicing and working with sacred medicines. So I'm assuming that this means psychedelics. As a means to restore my emotional body, I decided to hold a ceremony for myself following the night. So let's see. I knew I had to be particularly cautious with this medicine as I was in a vulnerable state. However, he wanted to still go ahead with it and see what would happen. Before ingesting the medicine, he set intentions and said prayers to the ancestral spirits, asking it to bring forward benevolent spirits and to help me illuminate, guide, and heal. Immediately afterward, I was granted access to the spiritual realm and blasted through the cosmic gate. So I'd be very curious to know what sort of plant medicine this is. We don't know. Daniel doesn't say. Maybe in one of his other articles he says, but I would assume that this is either ayahuasca or DMT or psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, or possibly peyote, mescaline, etc. I don't know which one it is, but clearly the way that he's explaining it, I'm assuming he's alluding to some very powerful psychedelic here. So Daniel is going to ingest this powerful psychedelic. I'm assuming they say medicine, but that's my guess. So he's setting his intentions to meet and connect with spirit guides. And that's an important thing to understand, is that you're already priming your mind at this point. You're priming your mind to be able to have a connection with something like this. So this is very, very powerful. Setting an intention is extremely powerful. This has to do with setting intentions are really powerful with achieving your goals, learning how to lucid dream, engaging in healing sessions like this. Because when you're setting your intentions, you're basically kind of programming you're telling your unconscious mind, hey, this is something important to me. So that way your unconscious mind will guide you to it, push you towards it, give you nudges, and subtly organize itself towards fulfilling that. It's nothing like magical. It's just deep psychology. You're communicating with your unconscious that this is something important to you. So anyway, he sets this intention to talk to his spirit guides, and Daniel says, after having many insights and realizations about my situation, because he was originally going into it for healing with regard to the breakup that he was going through. He says, after having many insights and realizations about my situation, I noticed a tear in the space-time continuum. An indigenous man was standing in a portal and looking at me as if staring through a doorway. The level of hyperrealism was impeccable. I could see every detail as if I was face-to-face with this man. So he has this vision of the space-time continuum ripping open and meeting an indigenous man, and it seems like he's describing very much what is being depicted in this photo right here, which I will make bigger so you can see that. So this is what Daniel is experiencing, and Daniel says, intuitively, I knew that he was here to help, so I let him do his thing. Instantly, the spirit started rattling this instrument over me, which forced these painful energies out in a violent convulsion. At the time, I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it was positive, so I surrendered to it. The next thing I remembered was waking up in the next morning, and for the next 5 days, I would feel completely at peace. All the pain I was experiencing had vanished and it never came back. And this felt like a rebirth. So I've had many deep spiritual experiences, especially with medicines. But I know it's something special to have a face-to-face encounter like this. The experience really opened me up to learning more about spirit guides and what purposes they serve in our lives. So Daniel's having this encounter with the spirit guides. It takes the form of an indigenous individual who comes through a portal and does some rituals, and this leads to Daniel feeling a sense of peace over the next 5 days in his life. So Daniel had this encounter facilitated by plant medicine, facilitated by psychedelics, and set his intention to have this experience. So the question is now, what are spirit guides? What are these beings? And how do they benefit? So Daniel says there's a lot of ambiguity surrounding the topic of spirit guides. We know they exist within another realm of information and here to help, but what exactly are they? Now I'm going to explain my position here, but I want to tell you Daniel's so that we can compare and contrast. So Daniel says the way I understand spirit guides is that they're interdimensional aspects of ourselves. In that sense, your spirit guides are different incarnations of your soul that have mastered different spiritual pathways within this world and others. Okay, so I'm going to discuss all this, but I want to make it clear what Daniel is saying. Daniel is saying that spirit guides are not any kind of external entity. According to Daniel, what a spirit guide is an aspect of you in the sense that your spirit guides are different incarnations that your soul has had and mastered different spiritual pathways within this world and others. So different incarnations that you've had over time. And this is what, according to Daniel, are spirit guides. So I'm going to comment on this in a moment, but I want to continue here just a little bit. Daniel says, I'm not saying that they're not real because they absolutely are, but we tend to have the wrong idea in looking outwards for them instead of going within. And this ties into a really great quote by Carl Jung that Renaissance Fairy shared in the live chat before we started this video today. And that is a quote by Carl Jung, which says, he who looks outside dreams, and he who looks inside awakes. He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakes. This idea that humanity is constantly obsessed with the external and looking to what's out there, and what's out there is an illusion. What is truth is what is in here, what is within you, what is in the mental realm. So thank you, Ren, for reminding me of that great quote by Carl Jung. And it's good that we're talking about Carl Jung, because this plays into the idea of archetypes here. So Daniel says, as an infinite consciousness yourself, you have incarnated countless times in every form. Your soul has encountered as many different races and species and beings from other galaxies and dimensions. The wisdom is stored in your soul, which can be retrieved, and this is where spirit guides play a role as projections of your own infinite consciousness. Okay, so let me see here. Let's talk about this a little bit. So, what are you? You are an eternal mind, okay? You are a being of frequency patterns. You are a being of eternal energy. In the Neogenian system, we refer to this as a Zeta. You can refer to it as an eternal mind or a soul. It's a being of frequency. And you as a mind, a being of frequency, a soul, a Zeta, are engaged in countless incarnations as you transform your inner data and rearrange the patterns within you into more expressive patterns. In other words, you are exploring your various patterns, your various energetic transformations as you explore the material realm. You can almost think of it in terms of like AI, and the material realm is kind of like training data. You're gathering data, you're gathering information, and as you explore the material realm and have experiences and fuck up and make mistakes and get things right and learn and grow, all of this is contributing to the evolution of your soul. The evolution of your mind, your Zetic evolution, your evolution as an eternal being. So you are an eternal mind, you are an eternal being. You're going through these various lifetimes and various incarnations. And as you go through this various lifetimes and various incarnations, you are transforming, you are growing, you are evolving. And you can think of it like a Rubik's Cube. You're constantly changing and varying your patterns, exploring increasingly optimized patterns, etc. Now, the thing is that when you incarnate into an avatar, when you have a Zetic link, a localization, when you interface with an avatar, the filtering mechanism of the brain filters out all the information that is irrelevant to your survival, because your brain, nervous system, and body has evolved over billions of years to do what? To survive. Not to show you the truth, not to make you happy, but to survive. That is what your brain, body, and nervous system, your avatar in general, had taken billions of years to do, so that you will survive and adapt. So this means that it filters out all irrelevant information that is not conducive to your survival. So if you were constantly thinking about information that of that time that you were a spider spinning a web or an electron spin changing on the other side of the universe, you're going to be easily eaten and killed by a predator, and that way via natural selection will select for brains and nervous systems and bodies that are geared towards the localized existence of what's in your immediate surroundings, because that's what contributes to your survival. So anyway, your avatar is a limiting function. It's a limiting, filtering, localization function. And that's exactly what an avatar does. And this is a good thing, because this is how we're able to have localized experiences with each other. I am over here, you are over there. We all have differences. We are all diverse, and we talk to each other and learn from each other in this realm of diversity and transformation. And so we go through these different lifetimes and different avatars, and this is contributing to our various incarnations, this is contributing to our evolution as a mind. So what Daniel is essentially saying, Daniel seems to have a similar view, but I mean, not the same, of course. I don't know much about Daniel's beliefs except for what I'm reading right here. But Daniel is saying that we are an infinite consciousness incarnating countless times. And so this is very similar. And so what Daniel is positing that spirit guides are projections of yourself, of aspects of you, of incarnations that you have had, of information that you have learned over the course of your past lives. Now, this means that when one is having contact with a spirit guide, essentially what you're doing here is lifting the veil of the filtering mechanism of the brain, and you're able to let through the aspects, the eternal aspects of yourselves, which he refers to as interdimensional, which whether you want to use that word or not. But anyway, so you're lifting that veil. So according to Daniel, these are not actual ancient spirits or something like that. These are aspects of yourself that are being projected because you're accessing that higher version of yourself. You're accessing this infinite version of yourself that contains all the information of all your past lives and everything that you have learned, etc. So you're really accessing aspects of you. We have more to read here, but so I want to, there's always so much I want to talk about here. So the question is that true? Is that right? Well, here's the thing. When it comes to spirit guides, I think it's a little more complicated than that. I think that is, in my opinion, a possibility, and I think something that can happen. So here's the idea. Reality is very complex, and if you are having an experience of an interaction with a being, I think that this can be many different things. For example, I think that it can be you accessing, like Daniel says here, a projection of your higher being, an aspect of yourself. Absolutely, 100%. I believe that is possible. I also believe that you are accessing the realm of archetypes and the collective unconscious. So in New Age terminology, this is known as the Akashic Records. In psychology, this is known as the collective unconscious, put forward by Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. And the collective unconscious is basically the reservoir of all archetypes, all human experiences, etc. So if you're thinking about just accessing your own unconscious, the collective unconscious is the aggregate of all of our consciousness together and all the experiences of all life, whether it's relegated to just human life or even expansive to across the galaxy and across the universe. So when you are interacting with a spirit guide, is it possible that you're interacting with a higher aspect of yourself? Absolutely, 100%. And I think that more often than not, that is what is happening. We also have to understand that that we are also accessing the collective unconscious as well. And so this is a reservoir of archetypal patterns. And so we're accessing different archetypes, and different archetypes are basically just different programs. And your mind will communicate in different ways. So here's my opinion when it comes to this sort of thing. So Daniel had an experience with an indigenous individual, right? An indigenous person. That's what they experienced. Now, does this mean that was someone that Daniel actually was in a past life or something like that? We can't know for sure. We don't know. But what is likely happening here is that one is accessing your unconscious mind, because that's what's happening when you're doing these things. You're accessing the power of your unconscious. Your unconscious mind communicates in symbols, in metaphors, and so it will put on something that will resonate with you. Not all the time, but very often. So, for example, someone it sounds like that Daniel is very much involved in indigenous culture in the way that Daniel refers to plant medicine and things like this. So this is very likely why his unconscious generated the image of an indigenous person. Whereas, let's say if you had someone with a different kind of religious background, it might have appeared as an archangel, or it might have appeared as a jinn, or it might have appeared as a Hindu god or goddess, Kali or Vishnu or whatever, or an encounter with the Buddha or Jesus or something like this. So what I mean to say is, if someone is encountering Jesus, it doesn't mean that they're actually encountering Jesus. If they're encountering the Buddha, that doesn't mean they're actually encountering the Buddha. It doesn't mean they're actually encountering our archangel. It doesn't mean that they're actually encountering an indigenous shamanic being or something like this. It is a projection of the unconscious that takes on a symbolic form that your mind will recognize. And so it's going to vary from person to person. So when it comes to spirit guides, The thing is I think it's a complex situation. I think most of the time when someone is having an interaction with the spirit guide, it's like Daniel says, it's an interaction with an aspect of yourself or an aspect of the collective unconscious, which is an aspect of you because it's all of us. So it is, like Daniel says, going in and you're interacting with an aspect of yourself that is manifesting in a certain projected way, whether that's an image of a indigenous healer or a Christ or a Buddha or an angel or an alien or whatever. One is accessing the vast reservoir of knowledge and information that is stored within you as a soul, within you as a Zeta, within you as a being of infinite power and infinite information, that vast reservoir and realm of information that is stored there. And but I do want to say that I do believe that it is a possibility to have a communication with beings that aren't an aspect of you as an individual. I think that it is possible to have communication and interaction with actual higher beings that are not an aspect of you, that are themselves their own Zetic entity. Though I want to say that it is my opinion that most of the time it is a connection with an aspect of you. Now, we have to be very, very careful here because there can be some misunderstandings with how to interact with these guides, and we want to make sure that we're doing so in a positive way. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So Daniel says, spirit guide is an umbrella term. It refers to different higher dimensional aspects of your soul and the myriad journeys that it has embarked on that you can tap into. I believe that this is right, and this includes archetypes, because archetypes are just programs that your mind has developed, internal programs that your mind has developed throughout lifetimes of incarnations or localizations. Daniel says, I don't necessarily believe that you have an assigned squad of beings to watch over you. I believe you're tapping into other incarnations of your soul's journey and retrieving wisdom from them. So I would agree with this as well. Personally, I don't believe that there is a squad of beings assigned to you that aren't aspects of yourself. I think that you have aspects of you, but I don't believe that there are assigned beings that are their own individual Zetic minds that are assigned to you. Now, can we say that for sure? No, we can't say that for sure. We can't say that with certainty. It could be true, but we don't know for sure. I from what we know about how reality works and how infinite and powerful the mind is, I think it's more likely that, like Daniel says, you're encountering aspects of yourself. So Daniel says, I believe you're tapping into other incarnation of your soul's journey and retrieving wisdom from them. Now, Daniel's a little bit ambiguous here, so I don't know, for example. So there's a difference between saying that you are you're experiencing a projection of your unconscious, of your soul, or that you're specifically interacting with an actual incarnation that one has had. So, for example, in my opinion, Daniel's encounter with an indigenous person, if Daniel is implying that, oh, that was literally a person he was in a past life at one time, he was that being on the planet at one point, I doubt that is true. I would say that it's much more likely that Daniel is encountering an aspect of his self, just like he says, but not a specific incarnation, but rather an aspect of it, and it is being projected as a indigenous healer, where someone else might experience, like I said, someone else might experience it as a Buddha or Jesus or an angel or a Hindu god or goddess. And I believe it will vary from person to person, because, you know, clearly people aren't going to, this is how your unconscious communicates. It communicates in symbols and puts on the clothing of what you're going to recognize and respond to. So, but I don't know for sure exactly what Daniel is saying. I agree for the most part with what Daniel is saying, in that this is an aspect of oneself that one is encountering, of your higher self, of your true self, of your infinite self that has had countless incarnations and has gathered information across lifetimes. Daniel says all the wisdom, support, and knowledge resides inside yourself. It's not something you should search outwards for. Therefore, by going deep into your own consciousness, that's how you connect with your spirit guides, as they're within you, not outside of you. And I like that idea a lot. I agree with that. And so these beings, whether they are aspects of yourself, you're tapping into these aspects of you, these eternal aspects of you, these archetypal powers that your mind has generated, these archetypal forces, all within you, all that you have, all that's, you can understand this a little bit like when you go to sleep and dream. When you go to sleep and dream, you're encountering aspects of yourself, whether it's a scary monster. That scary monster is probably representative of the archetype of the shadow self. If you're encountering a healing goddess in your dream, that could be encountering the archetype of the mother, or the healing and nurturing aspect of yourself. And these are all programs that your mind has developed in order to interact in the world and facilitate the different cognitive processes that is involved with thinking and interacting in the material realm and organizing information. So when you go to sleep and dream, you're encountering these things, but these things aren't necessarily incarnations that you have literally had. You didn't incarnate as the dragon or a mother goddess or whatever. These are aspects of you that are powerful energetic structures that are you, that are being manifest in a symbolic way. So when you go to sleep and dream, you're exploring an entire world, an entire realm that is you. And often your unconscious is trying to communicate with you. It's trying to tell you, things that you need to pay attention to. If you have recurring dreams, recurring nightmares, this is usually your mind going, hey, you need to pay attention to this. This is important. So I agree with Daniel 100% that your power is within you, and one shouldn't be looking externally. Now, I do want to say, though, like I said before, I think that this is a very complicated topic, and I do think that it is possible, in addition to this, to be able to establish contact with actual higher beings that are their own Zetic minds. So I do believe that is possible, but I also believe that looking within is what one needs to do and what one should focus on. In other words, one shouldn't focus on, oh wow, well, I really need to pray to this one being so that they'll guide my life, etc. That is not right. That is unhealthy. And if you had contact with a higher being, and if they were a benevolent one, I'm pretty sure they would say, hey, don't do that. Because the goal here on Earth in an avatar is to learn, grow, and evolve. And that means actualizing your own power, tapping into your internal power, not looking to an external God or an external being or a savior. It's about realizing, like Christ says, that the kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you. And so many different esoteric traditions have the same sentiment that what you're looking for is inside. Know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods, a shorter version of that inscribed at the entrance to the Temple of Delphi. And this is all about realizing that what you're looking for is inside and internal. So most of the time when you're having interaction with these beings, they're aspects of you. However, I do think that it is possible that there could be established interactions with external beings. So when I say external, that's such a complicated ultimately everything is internal. There is no such thing as pure externality, as something that's divorced from the mind. Everything is reliant on mind. Everything is founded on mind. But whether it's its own Zetic mind, its own Zetic being, or rather that it is an aspect of you, is where the question comes into play. So, for example, like in DMT experiences, I think DMT experiences, there's a very big open question right now. When one has a DMT experience, one encounters entities. Absolutely. One encounters entities when they are having a DMT experience. So the question is, when you are encountering these entities in a DMT experience, are you encountering your own higher self and all the archetypal programs there? Are you experiencing the infiniteness of your own mind, the infinity of your own mind, and it's being projected as beings that you're interacting with? Are you actually interacting with aspects of yourself that take the form of other beings, just like when you're in a dream? Or are they legitimately their own independent beings? And I think the question is really open to that right now. There is no definitive answer to that. And so I think that we need to be open to both possibilities. In my opinion, I think this requires much, much more study and investigation, but I think that the answer is probably and likely to be both. I think that it is likely very possible that one is encountering aspects of themselves. I think it's also very possible that one could be possibly encountering entities with an independent existence. But whether that is true or not, you don't want to be giving power to these beings or expect these beings to be guiding your life. And this is why it's much healthier to realize that you are the guide of your own life. You are your own savior. You don't want to be obsessed with, your angel guides or spirit guides that are looking out for you, or that the universe is going to make your life just great if you resonate at the right frequency or something like that. This now just starts to become religion in a new form, in new trappings and new clothings. And we don't want to do that. We want to stay open-minded as rational and rational as well. This is why in Neogenianism we subscribe to meta-rationalism, the idea that metaphysics can be understood rationally. We want to be open to and explore the metaphysical domain, but in a rigorous and rational way. Just like science explores the physical domain, we want to explore the metaphysical domain, and that's what we do in meta-rationalism. So it's important to be open-minded, very open-minded to all of these possibilities, and we want to explore all of these possibilities. Now, Daniel says that spirit guides are seen with the third eye. They don't usually occupy space. People often connect with their spirit guides during dreams, prayers, spiritual practice, and meditation. They are usually perceived in the form of visions that accompany intense feelings and downloads. So now the question is, what happens? How does this interaction occur? So Daniel talks about visions. Daniel says people usually experience spirit guides in visions. These visions can vary in intensity and can range from a vague imprint of something to watching a 5-dimensional being interact with you in high definition, depending on how clear the connection is. I think it also depends on what type of medicine one has ingested, how clear or what type of vision one has. I think that also plays a big role into it. It says having a vision of your spirit guide is usually accompanied by epiphanies, realizations, a deep sense of knowingness, or a spike of intuition. These visions can occur during meditation, spiritual disciplines, dreams, or spontaneously in your life. Now here, I want to say something very important about this, but let's just go a little more. Daniel talks about voices, how some might hear voices randomly at times that are foreign to your own, that feel completely external to you. Okay, so here's the thing. If you are, if you have ingested medicine, plant medicine, and are hearing voices, that's, something that could occur. I want to say, though, if you are totally lucid and just awake and you're hearing voices, you do want to talk to a therapist about that. If you're just walking around in your daily life and you're hearing voices, that's something that you're going to want to, talk to a psychiatrist, talk to a therapist about. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm saying, oh, you're just nuts. But the idea here is that for some people, the veil between the conscious and the unconscious are thinner than others. Most people have a very thick veil, that it's a clear demarcation between the unconscious and the unconscious, and we are strictly in the conscious waking world. However, some people's veil is much thinner, and unconscious starts to leak into consciousness. This is when you start seeing things and hearing things, because your unconscious, your unconscious contents are being projected into your consciousness in the form of hearing voices or seeing things. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that there is something wrong with you, not at all. Because often in the past, people who had this phenomena occur to them, they would be considered oracles and connected to the spiritual domain. But with that in mind, it is something that one would want to see a psychiatrist and a therapist for, because there are dangers that can come along with that as well. You can start to become paranoid and not be able to differentiate from what's real and what's not real, and think people are after you, or have thoughts about hurting yourself, or whatever. There's a lot of dangerous things that can accompany with that. So I just want to say, if you are hearing voices, that is, or seeing things, that is something that you're going to want to talk to a psychiatrist and therapist and see a doctor about. But anyway, Daniel continues here talking about downloads, and this talks about, and this is something that's discussed a lot in the New Age community. You'll hear this all the time. Oh, I got these downloads from the universe, or this download from my spirit guide. So I want to talk about this. Daniel says, if you're tapping into a spirit guide, a common way to receive information is via a download. A download is essentially a telepathic communication where you're tapping into a different quality of information outside of physical reality. Spiritual downloads can feel like intrusive thoughts or a deep knowing. You're essentially downloading knowledge from a higher source and have immediate epiphanies. This is usually how spirit guides communicate with you. They beam information into your consciousness. Rather, you download it by connecting with that particular incarnation. Yeah, so Daniel does seem to think that they are specific incarnations that one is connecting to. That's not my opinion, if that's literally what Daniel means, and it seems like he's emphasizing that more and more. If that's what Daniel means, yeah, I don't see spirit guides as being particular incarnations that you actually had. I view spirit guides, when you're connecting to a guide that is part of you, in my opinion, it is a projection of your higher self. And this will take on the form of, it could take on the form of many different things, like an indigenous healer, or Jesus, or a Buddha, a shaman, a Hindu god, or whatever. Doesn't mean that you actually have these incarnations, but these are the archetypal representations that are being presented to you. And different archetypal representations might be presented depending on what it is that you're looking for. If you're looking for healing, it might be presented in the form of a mother goddess or shamanic healer. If you're looking for wisdom, it might be in the guise of a knowledgeable archangel, or some archetype that is representative of wisdom. Just depends what it is that you're looking for. I believe that your mind will communicate with you, your higher self, which is infinitely powerful, as a projected archetypal form, not necessarily a literal incarnation that you actually were, like Bob from Tennessee or something. You're not going to connect to, when you were Bob from Tennessee. And I can't say for sure that that's not how it works, but based on the experiences that people have, they are very, very much archetypal imagery. Your gods and goddesses and Christs and Buddhas and angels and shamanic healers and things like this. I think that it is much more likely that it's an archetypal projection, not a literal incarnation that you are connected to. The incarnations that you have had contribute to the evolution of your infinite and all-powerful mind, but I don't believe you're communicating directly to these various incarnations. So Daniel continues by talking about intuitive spikes, intuition. Intuitive spikes tend to accompany other signals that you're tapping into a spirit guide. Often you have a vision of a spirit guide. You get a sharp intuitive spike regarding a certain occurrence in your life. If you're in a conflict with someone, perhaps your intuition will suddenly tell you to resolve the issue. You will suddenly know exactly what the right course of action is when previously it could have been unclear. If you're on the fence about a difficult situation, perhaps you will suddenly get a clear insight about which path will serve your growth and which option you need to take. Now, and Daniel's going to continue to talk about how to connect to your spirit guides. But before we talk about how to connect to your spirit guides, I want to address that because what's being said here is important. So there is a healthy way to go about this, and then there is an unhealthy way to go about this. And I believe that using tarot cards as an example is a good analogy to understand this. And by the way, if you want to know what I think about tarot cards, check out my video on what tarot cards really are. In brief, what tarot cards are a symbolic language to communicate with your unconscious mind. Your unconscious communicates in archetypal symbols, like I said, like archangels and goddesses and demons and Buddhas and Christs and whatever. This is how your unconscious communicates. Tarot cards are a very rich symbolic language of these archetypes. You know, you look at these archetypes. There's the devil, death, the tower. There are, the fool, the empress, the hierophant, the lovers, the moon. You see, these are very powerful archetypal symbols. You think about the moon, that comes with a lot of different, it comes with, the darkness of the night, the depth of the unconscious, the healing recesses of going into the depths of the soul. There's a lot of different things that come with the symbol of the moon. There's a lot of things that come with the symbol of death, or the symbol of the lovers and union, or the symbol of the tower, collapse and catastrophe, and change. So these are archetypal symbols. When you're using tarot cards, this is a way for you to tap into your unconscious. And so it's a way to have a communication with your unconscious, because your mind is using these tarot cards as a form of projection. Instead of projection as a vision, these cards serve as your vision. The cards become your vision, because you're not having a vision of archetypal imagery, because the cards already contain that archetypal imagery. So when you look at these cards, that is sort of like the vision, and your unconscious will have intuitive spikes on things that it's trying to, I'm hitting the wrong button here, things that it's trying to tell you. But it's not anything woo-woo or mystical or whatever. It's all psychological. It's your unconscious, which is a vast reservoir of information that is related to the right brain hemispheric functions that have to do with holistic patterns, meaning and symbols and imagery, not linear thinking, not mathematical thinking, not linguistic, linear, logical modes. It's a holistic, non-local, symbolic, metaphorical, allegorical space of symbolism. And so anyway, my point here is that Daniel is saying, if you're in conflict with someone, perhaps your intuition will suddenly tell you how to resolve the issue. You'll suddenly know exactly what the right course of action is, when previously it could have been unclear. So he's talking about this intuitive spikes that one might have when they're in contact with their spirit guide. So I want you to see that this is sort of similar, and draw an analogy to tarot cards. Let's say that you're having a conflict with your friend, and you want to use tarot cards to try and understand that better. If you're trying to use tarot cards to understand that better, you might lay out a spread and see what your intuition picks up on. See what your intuition tells you and picks up on what might be the issue. Perhaps it's because you haven't paid them enough attention, and because you haven't paid them enough attention, maybe you don't know that consciously, but perhaps you're unconsciously guided to a specific card that represents that to you. I don't know what card that would be representative of to you. It differs from every individual. But if there's a certain card that represents a lack of care, let's say it perhaps depicts a sick person or something, and you're drawn to this card that's depicting a sick person, and they're sick because they're not given the attention they need. Perhaps intuitively, this connects with you, and this starts churning the gears of, oh, I'm really drawn to this, and maybe this has to do with that I'm not giving enough care and attention to my friend, and this is why we're having conflicts, because they're feeling resentful because of that. So because of that, you have used these tarot cards to unlock an intuitive insight that can be helpful and beneficial in your life. But there's the danger. You don't want it to become a crutch. You don't want it to be like, oh, I can't do anything in my life without consulting the cards. I can't make any sort of decision without asking the cards what to do, and then believing that everything the cards say are truth. It might not always be right. It might not always be correct. It's not, hard line, black and white when it comes to this sort of thing. It's a very dreamy space. It's a very intuitive. It's a very symbolic space. You can misinterpret things. Okay. So with tarot cards, you want to use it as a tool to augment your intuition, to think about things in different ways, to get a different perspective. You're working with your intuition. You're thinking outside the box. You're not relying on it for direct answers to guide your life. You don't want the tarot to guide your life. You want to use it as a tool to unlock your own power. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the same sort of thing if you're having a connection with spirit guides. If you're having a connection with spirit guides, which is an aspect of you, you want to use it in a healthy way where it's like, oh, okay, this is giving me intuition about a specific thing going on in my life. You don't want to get into a point where you're like, I can't do anything unless I consult to my spirit guides. I don't know what to do about my love life. I can't make a decision in my job. I don't know what, I have to talk to my spirit guides. See, now you're giving your power away. You're not tapping into your inner power. You're giving your power away. You're projecting it, even though it's an aspect of you. You're not treating it like an aspect of you. You're treating it like an external deity at this point, and now you're projecting rather than integrating. So you don't want to engage in something like that because you're giving your power away at that point. You also don't want to get into the mindset that every intuitive insight that you have from your spirit guides are true. If your spirit guides, just like tarot, just every intuition that you have doesn't mean it's absolutely true. It might be an allegory. It's symbolic, so you might be misinterpreting it. There's so many different things where it might be not true in a literal way. It's an allegory for something. It's a metaphor. It's a symbol for something. And this is critical because I see this happening all the time in New Age community. New Age community talking about getting downloads from these spirit guides, and sometimes these downloads are crazy. Some of them are very smart and very intelligent ideas. Some of them are crazy as fuck and clearly not in the realm of reality. And probably because they're taking something that's supposed to be metaphorical and they're taking it literally. That's probably what it is. But the idea here is that it doesn't matter if what the tool is. You want to examine everything rationally. So this is where our process comes into play in meta-rationalism. We want to understand metaphysics rationally. So what this means is being open to intuitions, being open to downloads, being open to exploring things in the metaphysical domain, but being rational about it and examining it with reason. Intuition and reason are synergistic aspects of the mind. They're not enemies. And too often today, they're treated as enemies. You see people who are very intuitive, like let's say in the spiritual community, who view logic and reason as something that is limiting and confining and almost bad and wrong. Oh, don't think about things like only use your intuition. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people engaged in, the scientific community, the physics community, the materialist, atheistic community, who are all about analyzing things logically, but they completely dismiss the intuitive metaphysical domain as being woo-woo and crazy and not grounded in reality. And you have these aspects that are fighting with each other, and they need to be synergized, synthesized, and integrated. They're complementary aspects, just like the right hemisphere is complementary to the left hemisphere of the brain. They both aid in understanding existence. Intuition is what we use to tap into the metaphysical domain, the frequency domain, the domain of the source. This is what we use to tap into it. And what we gather from it, we then examine with logic and reason and think, okay, is this, what was I connecting to? Is it literally true? Is it allegorically? Is it an allegory? Is it a metaphor? Does it comport and integrate with what we know to be true about existence mathematically? Or does it conflict rationally? Does it lead to contradiction? Does it lead to error? These elements need to be synthesized together. Having intuition and reason as enemies is a completely wrong way to live existence that is engaged with attaining a higher consciousness. It's like the right brain and the left brain are complementary to each other. And right brain is associated with intuition and holistic thinking and symbolism. Left brain is associated with linear thinking, logic, reason, mathematics. And do we have our right brain and right and left hemispheres fighting each other? No. They synthesize and synergize for how we understand the world. For example, when it comes to language, if we want to understand language, we use both the right hemisphere and the left hemispheric functions. The left hemispheric functions deal with the syntax or the structure of language, the rules of language, how words are structured, how sentences are formed, the logical rules of language. Left hemispheric functions deal with that. Right hemispheric functions deal with the meaning that is embedded with those structures, the meaning of the information. And you need both to be able to communicate. If you know all about the structure, but don't know anything about the meaning, you're not going to be able to communicate. And if you know the meaning, but not the structure, it's going to be a jumbled mess. And this is why when people are connected to the intuitive domain is a jumbled mess. It's the logical, rational ordering function that allows one to structure that and make sense of it. That's why when a lot of people in the New Age community come out with these crazy ideas, it's because they're tapping into that jumbled, meaningful realm, but it's jumbled, and they're not using the reason to structure and order and analyze it and filter it. So this is why some good information can come through, but then some really wild, wacky ideas can come through as well. So as we emphasize in the Neogenian system of meta-rationalism, we have to be plugged in intuitively while examining that information that we get rationally. Also, really want to point this out, even if one thinks that they're communicating with a higher being, let's say that you legitimately are connecting with a higher being. It does not mean that that higher being is giving you truthful information. It doesn't mean that you need to be taking that information as law. You need to be guided by your own mind and your own so even if some higher being tells you something about existence, it doesn't mean that that is necessarily true. You want to still examine it with logic and reason and make sure that it fits in with what we know about reality. Because otherwise, we're just going to build a bunch of crazy religions that are all fighting with each other because they'll be arguing about whose download is the real download and blah, 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 blah. So that's very important to understand as well. Ultimately, what really matters is we're here to evolve individually and collectively, and anything that takes away from that is a distraction. And if you're starting to rely on an external being or rely on a projection or rely on cards or horoscopes or whatever, if you're relying on something that's not you, that's a problem. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have a supportive community where we build each other up. I'm not saying there's something wrong with relying on another. But if you're using these things as crutches, these are getting in the way of your growth and our growth as a collective. And that is counterproductive to what we are here to do: experience, learn, and grow, and evolve and actualize together. So, Daniel talks about connecting with the spirit guides and how to do it. He talks about setting your intentions. He talks about prayer and basically being present and paying attention to your intuition and surrendering to them. So I think that again, this is one of those things where one has to be careful when it comes to things like prayer and surrendering. One has to be very careful with this sort of thing. If you are going to engage in prayer, depends how one defines prayer. Okay. That's not something that I typically like to do. I come from a very Christian household, so prayer has a very negative connotation to me. But regardless of what you're doing, if you're trying to connect with an aspect to yourself and you want to call it prayer, that's fine. You can call it prayer, but as long as you're not dependent on something that you believe to be external to you, it's as long as you use it as a mechanism to make contact with an aspect of yourself. Like, okay, I'm using this to set an intention to make contact with an aspect of my inner self, not, oh, I need to pray to and worship this being so that it will tell me what to do or give me a better life. See, there's a big difference. Now you're giving your power away. You're projecting your power self. You're taking your power and projecting it and giving it away to some other being. And this is not good. This is what happens in religion. This happens in fascism when people project their power self onto a political figure. It happens in celebrity worship. It happens in all sorts of stuff, and has very negative consequences because you're giving your power away instead of actualizing what's in you. So if you're going to, use something that's called prayer, it should not be about communicating with an external being that you need to please so that it will give you a better life or give you answers. No, it's about, okay, I'm going to set my intentions to access a certain part of me. And you can imagine it as a angelic figure or any kind of symbolic archetypal figure if you want. The idea of surrendering, I think, is also something that needs to be approached with caution. If you are having an experience, and if one is having an intense experience, you can either fight it or you can go along with it. And yeah, you're more apt to have a better experience and a more profound experience if you go along with it. If you're fighting it, this happens a lot with the concept of an ego death. If you're trying to, because when you're having these intense experiences, you can start to forget who and what you are. And that freaks a lot of people out. And some people try to cling to it and fight that and go, no, I'm going to remember who I am and what I am. This is scary. I'm going to fight. But, or you can just let go and go along with the experience and surrender to it, so to speak. So if one is talking about surrender in that sense, okay, that's fine. Yes. But again, one has to be very careful here because this is coming close to when we start talking about prayer and surrendering and things like that, we need to be careful because this is starting to get into the realm of religion, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in the proper way. We don't want to think of surrender again as in like, oh, I'm surrendering my life to the Lord. I'm going to give up my life. That's what a lot of people do. I'm surrendering myself to the Lord. The Lord will guide my life. And I'm giving up my life for the Lord. Or even if it's your spirit guides or the universe, I'm going to surrender my will to the universe, and the universe will lead my life in the way it's supposed to go, or something. I see that a lot in the New Age community. Oh, just surrender to the flow of the universe. You can work with the flow of the universe, but ultimately you are the universe. God damn it. You are the universe. You are not a leaf being swept along by the river. You are the current. And so you can direct yourself and direct your life and transform your life. So you are the current. You're not the leaf. You are not some servant. You are your own savior. And so we have to realize that, because and the reason why I'm passionate about this and express it in such a way is because this is what humanity has been getting wrong for thousands of years. They look externally instead of internally, and they give up their power instead of embracing their power. And this has to be done in a healthy way, of course, because the double-edged sword is you want to understand what that really means. You don't want to become too egoic in thinking that, oh, I am this is what happens in some like secret societies and stuff. This is where you have to be careful. This happens a lot in secret societies where people are taught this and begin to learn this and start to access higher consciousness, but they don't do it in a way where they fully understand what existence is, what reality is. And so they're kind of like half awake when it comes to higher consciousness, and they get this idea in their head of, oh, I am the master of the universe, and the universe will bend to my will. And now you're going to get a lot of people engaged in manipulation of others, domination of others, trying to control the world. This is where this, like world domination comes into play in a lot of themes of these secret societies and esoteric systems and whatnot. Because people become obsessed with power, because they realize that, oh, yes, I am a force of the universe, but they don't realize the aspect in which we are all the force of the universe and we are all interconnected and we all need to be in this feedback loop of helping each other rather than looking at it as something to dominate and exert one's will over. Yes, we can exert our will and we are masters of the universe, absolutely, but together as a collective, and we need to do it in a coordinated symphony, not with a bunch of tyrants and manipulators and assholes, quite frankly, just trying to bend other people's wills to theirs, and it becomes this very negative type of thing. This is what would be considered like black magic or using these forces in a negative way. But I mean, we're not really getting into that today, but this is where it's really important to understand these things in a way that is empowering to you and the collective. We are the current, we are the force of the evolution together. And when we realize that that is true, we can begin to shape a new world according to our collective will. And that's why in our system, we support a teleocratic system, a system of teleocracy. Teleocracy comes from the word telos, which means purpose. And the purpose of our teleocratic planetary civilization is to increase the quality of life for all. If a system is not about increasing the quality of life for all, it's a flawed and dangerous system. What we should all be engaged in, and this should be obvious, and it's frustrating that I have to state the obvious, or even that this is sort of a radical idea or a utopian idea. It's not. It should be square one. It should be basic, and it needs to be recognized as that, because as long as we keep thinking, oh, this is impossible, or this is a radical idea, or this is crazy, it's never going to happen. We have to realize collectively that, hey, this is what we should be doing, and it's obvious. We should be trying to create a world where we're increasing the quality of life for everyone. Should be simple, should be square one. That should be our purpose. Not on gaining money, not on gaining power, not on dominating others, not in trying to one country against another and one religion against another and all. No, none of that. It's about increasing the quality of life for everyone. That is our purpose. That is our telos. That is our collective will, which we can create right here and now. And we can do that by tapping into our inner power. That's important, because we are here to shape reality. We are the second coming of Christ. We are the powers that are here to raise everyone else up. That's the important thing to understand. If you are someone who's, gaining higher consciousness, the point is not to dominate others. The point is not to try and exert your will over others. The goal is to help them be raised up. You want everyone to be raised up to your level and beyond your level. The greatest of a good teacher, the greatest dream of a great teacher is for their students to surpass them. And you'll know a fucked up person if they're trying to limit people or keep them below them. No, you want to raise people up. You want to help them transcend it. And that's why in our system, we want everyone to reach the highest level of Maslow's extended hierarchy of needs. The top two levels are self-actualization and transcendence. Self-actualization is when you're reaching your full potential. Transcendence is when you're helping others reach their potential. Because we realize that we're in a collective, we're in a feedback loop. And even though we are all the current, all of our ripples come together and affect each other. So we need to direct our collective current to create a better world for all of this. And we can do that by tapping into our power and learning how to use our own internal fortitude, our own internal will, and not relying on some external deities or external beings, etc. It's about us. It's about understanding our power and our potential. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please like and subscribe. It helps out a lot. And if you want to support this channel and see it grow and help me reach more people and create bigger and better videos, support over on Patreon. It's the best way to support my work, patreon.com/MorgueOfficial, and you'll get access to all of our members-only videos. We're having a members-only video right now called Are Atoms Conscious? As we explore the idea, are atoms alive? Is there an inner experience at the atomic level? That's what we're talking about. So you can get that by subscribing to Patreon at any tier, or tier 2 or higher here on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video. And as always, remember, hey, this isn't church, so don't feel obligated to support monetarily. You don't have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking and subscribing and sharing these videos. Please do. That being said, I do appreciate the support very much. And I want to give a shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nuselina, Paul Rogers, Eric Fire, Masam, Christopher Smith, and everyone else. Thank you very much.